This event is sponsored by the Woodside Arts and Culture Committee, a group of like-minded individuals here in the town of Woodside. And we sponsor events every first Friday here in the town. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's literature, sometimes it's artists, like what we're going to be experiencing this evening with Jennifer. So I want to thank you again for coming. Now, this event will be on our YouTube channel on Monday. If you're not familiar with that, we have flyers in the back. You can pick it up and you can tune in and enjoy it once again. So without further ado, I'm going to be introducing Jennifer. I just want to remind you that with her title of her program, Chasing the Light, photography literally means painting with light. And so it's only appropriate that we have this evening. So without further ado, Jennifer, thank you.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank Woodside, in particular Kit and William and Jessica and my friend Vicki for allowing me the opportunity to talk about something I'm very passionate about, which is photography, as you could imagine. Of course, William just told you this, but photography is essentially light writing. And I like to think of it as writing a story with light. First, I wanted to ask, how many of you have iPhones or Galaxies? Did you raise your hand? Okay. Okay, so if that's the case, you all essentially are photographers, because 95 million photos and videos are uploaded to Instagram every day. I'm sure you've contributed to that, although some sources estimate that the number is closer to 1.3 billion. And that's just Instagram, if one includes videos as well. So in that sense, you have all, I'm sure, had the experience of taking a shot, saying, wow, this is fantastic. The light is fantastic. It's wonderful. I'm going to share my story with the other billion photos that are up there. One of the issues, one of the problems with having all these things uploaded, it's very difficult for just normal photographers. You'll notice here that you can't go anywhere anymore without people not just taking pictures of the Mona Lisa, but putting themselves in front of the Mona Lisa for some reason. I've never understood that. Even monks have their own web pages, as you see on the upper left here. There. In fact, this gentleman, Kanchak, I met in the Lama Yuru Monastery in Ladakh, India, and he has thoughtfully used the picture I took of him as his profile picture, which is right there. He didn't, I would say this is gratis. I didn't ask him to pay for it because I think that would be bad karma. But I do know that it is ubiquitous. Photography is everywhere. And that is both a blessing and a curse for a number of reasons. So why is it that I go to these strange places? Well, one of the reasons is just what I talked about. You have to go farther away to find places where people don't have cell phones, where you aren't jockeying for position to get the best shot so you can put it on Instagram or on Facebook. And also, I like to travel. There are inherent problems with that. What I'm going to ask you to do now is, since you're all photographers and pretty comfortable with that, I'm going to ask you to look at this very short, I think it's 4 minutes, a short compilation of the pictures I took in Ladakh, India. I think I put them together for Eric, who is back there somewhere, and his wife. And all I want you to do as you scroll through the pictures is pick one picture in which you think the light is significant, that it's more than just a picture like you were there or a portrait, but it has significance. So has anybody chosen one photo that you think the light has some significance in it that resonates? When I ask this question, usually people are picking things like this. You mentioned the golden boat. This is golden hour. You mentioned the monk. And I didn't even plant you guys in the audience. Eric, I know you know this one because I've seen it on your wall. And all of these, what they all have in common is each one of them was taken at either the golden hour at night or early morning. Because that's when the shadows are intense. The shadows provide a sense of time or timelessness. And they're just pleasing. People like warm colors. That's not to say all photography has to be warm and cozy, but it's the light that I'm looking for. I call it a certain slant of light. Now, I'll show you why in a minute. These 5 pictures are really the only pictures from that video that I would consider to be chasing that slant of light. And that means I have about a rate of 6%, which isn't great. The other thing that I wanted to tell you, nobody asked me what is that annoying sound that I kept hearing over and over again. Om Mani Padme Hum is a chant, a Buddhist chant, and it's supposed to bring concentration and comfort. And I first heard it when we were driving over that first road that you saw in the video, over the Kalunga Pass to Kashmir. The man who was playing it was our van driver, and I think he needed, frankly, on that road, I think he needed to concentrate. If you looked over the side, you would see sort of the carcasses of cars that hadn't made it on the recent turn. There were no guardrails, and they have, if you've ever been to India, you've seen the buses where pretty much everybody's trying to get a free ride on top that you would kind of edge around. And I remember at one point asking him, I looked and I said, I can't find my seatbelt. And he just looked over the edge and he said, it doesn't matter. And I thought, okay, so why am I telling you that? Well, why would I go through that much trouble to capture light? For me, it's kind of an obsession, but it comes with issues. The topics I'm going to talk about tonight are how the whole journey started, what are the challenges in trying to find a unique light that you can capture, how can you increase the odds of doing that since you're all photographers? I'll show you some tricks for that. And then how do you decide, are you going to represent this light in black and white or color? And the very last thing, very quickly, is post-processing, which can be kind of a curse or a blessing. For me personally, and I think for anyone probably who's photographing who's probably my age, can't imagine older, but about my age, you may have started as I did in a darkroom. My grandfather built a darkroom in the basement of our garage when I was 12. And he started photographing in the 30s. That gives you a hint of how old I am. And he was the community photographer. So, of course, it was only black and white. And he developed his own pictures. And then afterwards, he would color them in with colored pencils. And he'd have to ask my grandmother because it turns out he was colorblind. So we got some kind of strange community pictures, I think, when he didn't have her to talk to. This was my first camera. Has anybody ever seen a camera like this before? Okay. Actually, not a Leica. It had a Leica lens. It was a Mamiya Rolleiflex and twin lens reflex. So you took a picture by looking down and, yeah, only had 12. My camera had only 12 shots. So unlike now where we go take pictures of horses, we put it on burst mode. So we go like a machine gun and one of them has to be good, right? You have to be very careful about what you were going to waste your money on in terms of what you're going to take a shot of. The other thing that had a big influence on me was this picture. And Clint and Jackie, who are here, friends of mine for 150 years, they know this picture because it was taken in Maine, where they have a home. And I won't go through the whole story because it's sort of embarrassing. But other than to say at 5 in the morning, I couldn't sleep, so I picked up my camera and walked down to the dock of this hotel we were staying. And I took this picture. Now, this is probably 15, 20 years ago, quite a while ago. Was it 15? Oh, thank you. Feel so much better. And I was in Aaron's frame shop framing this or matting it when some young man came over and said, "Oh, I like your work. Do you exhibit?" Well, I had never exhibited before, but I was embarrassed to say no. I thought, "Oh, yeah, I do." And he said, "Well, here's my card. And when you have your next show, would you give me a ring?" Well, because of that sort of validation of this particular picture, I contacted a Palo Alto gallery. I created a portfolio and a website and was accepted to the gallery and had a show. Contacted him, he showed up and he bought the picture. So that kind of validation is sort of what you need in this world because we're all photographers. There's a million of us. And that was very significant to my, I don't know if you'd call it a career, but certainly my passion. I don't know if any of you are poets in this group. I'm an ex-English teacher, so I had to put this in. It's heavily edited, and I won't tell you why. But this is the poem that sticks in my mind all the time. There's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons. When it comes, the landscape listens and shadows hold their breath. And I just think this is so marvelous for the feeling I get when I get to a site where the light is perfect. And I just have to capture that. If you go to look this up, you'll find out it has to do with death, but we're not going to talk about that. That kind of ruins the whole thing. Okay, so what are the challenges other than, going on these crazy rides over bad roads to find a unique kind of light? As I mentioned, what I call the Instagramization of places of natural beauty. We'll talk about that. The odds, like how do you get to the right place at the right time? The cost of the travel, both physical, financial, and mental. And then the infrastructure and politics of some of these places that you want to go to that maybe are not ready for prime time. And I'll give you an example of that. I just went on the internet and I typed in national parks, iPhones. And I got these series of pictures. How many of you have experienced this? Have visited a national park where it's so crowded that, and everybody's, jockeying for position, and you just want to turn around and go home. I think that's part of that. You can go during the winter, you can go other times, but we are sort of loving these places to death. And so, I go farther and farther away. The other problem is what I would call the over saturation of most of these pictures. This picture is not mine. I'm not going to claim this, but I went oversaturated pictures and this showed up. And what that means is that someone is amping up the color and the contrast either for likes or because they like themselves, they like the way this looks. And because of that, now if you post a picture on Facebook that is a lovely picture and the light is lovely, if you look at the comments, the first comment's always AI or artificial intelligence or, you know, some negative comment because people don't, they're so used to this hypersaturation that they don't believe it when you have a shot that's kind of magical. The cost in mental, financial, and physical stress of getting to the shot is substantial. And I'll give you an example. This shot, which was taken in Myanmar, for this shot, I flew 13 hours to Frankfurt, then took a flight to Yangon, which is the old Rangoon, then was picked up by a group. And the next morning, we got up before dawn, rowed out in a boat to get underneath this. This is the Ubane Bridge, which is the oldest and longest teak bridge in existence in Myanmar. And then, you know, watch people, I had 100 shots of people walking across this bridge till somebody with an umbrella did, nice red umbrella, and the birds were in there for luck. Just lucky. AI, no AI there. The other trip, as an example, this trip was to the Camargue last May. A couple of the shots are from them, the two on the right over there. And in this one, you put some waders on, and the guy takes you to the beach or to a swamp where the horses, these are semi-feral horses, where the guardians, who are those guys that you saw back there, tend them and kind of run them at you. And you're, you know, taking pictures very quickly, hoping that they know they're supposed to part when they get to you and not run into you. That was an amazing experience. It sort of validated my love of horses, and this is one of the prints that came from that day in particular. These guys they are actually paid by the state government to herd the horses, and I say semi-feral. They breed the horses as well. It's one of the oldest breeds in Europe. They, I think, have black skin, but their hair, their hide is white, and that gives them sort of this gray color. Another example, I guess, this trip is sort of seminal in terms of, you ask yourself, why did I do this? This is the beginning of the trip to Kashmir. And the Kashmir was tacked on to the trip to Ladakh, India, which is in the northern Himalayas. And the night before we left for Kashmir, our leader, there were like 5 of us, I guess, said, you know, I'm not sure you want to continue. That they're having some unrest in Kashmir. They're always fighting for their independence against India. And I mean, your insurance won't cover this if anything goes wrong. Being cheap or thrifty, I thought, I paid for this trip. I really have to do it. So I and 3 other people just elected to continue on to Kashmir. As we left, the very first thing is that our car broke down. Unfortunately, the people were very kind on the way. But we hadn't even gotten to the pass yet and helped us repair it. So that took a couple hours. And then we got to the pass, which is 18,000 feet. To elect to go on this trip, you had to take altitude pills so that you wouldn't have altitude sickness. That was the other reason I went. I thought, I paid for those pills. I'm not going to waste those pills, and I already took one of them. So you can only stay up there for 15 minutes because you just have a hard time breathing otherwise. But we made it. We made it over the pass. We got down to the bottom to the town that was supposed to be our jumping off place for Lake Dal, which is a lake beautiful lake that Brits used to go to during the Raj period. They rented, or they had their own houseboats, and they were escaping the heat and the mugginess of the lowlands. So we were supposed to go to Dal Lake. Well, it turns out that as we got there, it turned out that the Indian government had imposed a curfew from 9 in the morning till midnight. And oddly enough, you'd think it would just be the reverse. But they had some uprisings in Srinagar, and they didn't want people going to Srinagar and causing more trouble. So we thought, well, they're going to lift this eventually. So we spent the day in the town, which turned out to be a very cool thing. Got to know the natives a little bit, locals, played hacky sack with them. I'm not sure what this guy was doing. I think he had in mind that I was going to stay there. But we got to hike into the hills to see this nomading goat herders family. And these people who have very little, absolutely nothing. They move from pasture to pasture, have the most incredible faces. And the light coming in from the side of the yurt was beautiful. This guy, this is his family. A lot of kids. I guess there's not much to do in a yurt in the winter and procreate. So there are a lot of kids. Got to see the equivalent of their 7-Eleven, the hookah shop in town, and made signals to some of the women who are very hardworking. They were building a house, so they were toting lumber around. And then met the local laundry woman. He did the laundry for half of the town. So that evening, we had a little discussion. We thought, well, if we leave at 12 midnight, we can not be arrested. We can go to Lake Dal, and maybe we can hire a boatman to take us over to this houseboat that had already been rented. So we did that. At midnight, we left. About 3 in the morning, we got there. The driver dumped us out with our luggage and our photo equipment and took off because I think he was a little concerned about being arrested. So here we are on the side of the lake. We're looking at this beautiful lake, semi-dark. And you can hear the sound of the mullahs doing the morning prayers all around the lake. There are churches, what do you call them? Mosques. There are 3 or 4 of them around the lake. And so you would hear this sound. It was both beautiful and a little bit terrifying because we thought, what if the guy doesn't show up with the shikara, which is the boat that was going to take us? Fortunately, he did show up. This is what the boats look like in the daytime, and rowed us across to, very tourist oriented, rowed us across the lake to the houseboats beyond. And they were beautiful, and the light was beautiful. And this was just a gorgeous, gorgeous scene. Some of the people weren't as happy to see us. These guys look a little suspicious. There's also the issue of traveling in a Muslim country as a woman. I'll just leave it there. So now, given the fact that you're in some weird place, you finally, you want to get this light. It costs a lot to get there. What are some of the ways that you can increase your odds of getting that slant of light that you're looking for? As you probably have seen from my pictures, focus on dawn and dusk and seasonal pictures, because if you have a golden glow of the aspens in Colorado, there's the light that you're looking for. Keep in mind, there's no such thing as bad weather. Talk about that. And then stalking the light. Most photographers know that you have to plan the shot and you have to set it up. Always carry a camera and then learn how to post-process. So dawn and dusk, the last workshop, or second to last workshop I was on, was in the Camargue region, a very swampy area. It kind of looks like the Baylands with croissants, because it's southern France. But they have these incredible horses that I told you about. So there, you'll see that the lighting is just gorgeous. This is Joshua Tree, early morning. These are this is a swamp in New Orleans, where my sister-in-law set up a kayak ride for just the 2 of us. And we kayaked around and saw the dawn coming up, and it was fantastic. Good light, really good light there. And back to the Camargue. Again, the Camargue is kind of gloomy most of the time, but you get these shafts, these slants of light, if you're lucky, just miraculous. And they light up the scene. And we're standing there in our waders, and we're just aglow with this amazing light. This one you can see over there, a little processed. It was early morning, and I just wanted it to be almost black and white, so you can see why it's silver. Different shot of Half Dome. My daughter and I hiked up to Glacier Point when the road was closed, so there weren't any other people, or very many people up there to get that shot. And then, of course, this one. I just think this is magical. This was we call them godlight, when it's almost like God has appeared and shot across the scene and lit up these horses. I love that shot. And then, more of the evening, a lot of people, a lot of horses running at you constantly. This one was taken a couple of weeks ago in Colorado, Trappers Lake, and it was the most beautiful fall I've ever seen. And then again, this guy who had the craziest dog imaginable, but with the glow of the aspen trees in the back, it was just a magical, magical scene. You almost stop to look and not take the shots. And then the neighboring ranches sent some guys over there with horses to run back and forth across the lake, and I took that one there. One of the few times you can go to Yosemite and not see other people. November is a good time. And this was sort of very last of the leaves several years ago. And I think this is one of the first shots I ever took with a digital camera. It's Patagonia. And it is, I think it is, I can't remember the name, Los Glaciar State Park in the fall. These beautiful linden trees. And the other thing to keep in mind as a photographer, there really is no such thing as bad weather. One of the statements that I heard, and I'll always remember, is a sky without clouds is like soup without salt. And it gives you an entirely different dimension. This was both a sad and I think a hopeful picture of, again, Trappers Lake a couple weeks ago. They had a fire that just in 2002, I think, that destroyed tons and tons and tons of acres. And just now, 23 years ago, it's just coming back. The aspen's coming first. The State Wildlife and Forest Department decided to let it burn because there's a lot of park beetle damage. But in a way, it's hopeful because you have these little glows of aspen. In another 30 years, it's going to be beautiful. Oops. Shot in Cascade. Sometimes you think about using light to tell a story. Sometimes the weather is the story. And this is an approaching storm in Cascade. This again from this workshop was called Cowgirls with Cameras. And I thought it was a couple of cowgirls with cameras who led a workshop. Turns out everybody was a cowgirl with a camera except for me. I mean, they were cowgirls. They worked on ranches. Their side gig was equine photography. So I learned a lot from them, but I had very little credibility there as not a rancher. But just to give you the scope of this amazing stuff, and the clouds just make it seem obviously more dramatic. 5 minutes later, we're all drenched with a thunderstorm. And if you want to go to a place that has incredible light, this is from Iceland. And the light, the lichen on the hills, the lava, dark lava, and then occasionally, the little god light that might come in if you're lucky and light these horses. The horses' manes were like a Clairol commercial. They were so beautiful. And the horses are very sweet as well. And then this one was a day in Jackson Hole, I think. I thought this is going to be a crummy day for photography because it's raining. But then it becomes this, I call this into the storm because you just have an anchoring item like the RV and then these incredible rains and so forth. And then back to Iceland. Have any of you been to Iceland before? You got to go. You got to go. It's the most incredible place in the world. This is called Diamond Beach because these little hunks of ice are glaciers that are sort of sucked out from a neighboring lagoon and then they wash into shore. And they are magical. Just magical. And then, of course, without bad weather, you can't get a rainbow. This looks like the fakest picture I've ever seen. When we saw this rainbow with the horses, we just lost it. And we were so excited. It was just the perfect ending to the evening. So what else can you do to amplify your chance of getting perfect light or a little slant of light? That's lovely. I call it find a frame and wait for something to walk into it. So this one in particular, this is in Cuba. I was on a tour where the guy basically drops you onto the streets of Havana, which was fine, and shows you a couple places that might be good shots. I was fascinated. We all saw this stairway. We thought, wow, that is just like a sculpture. And I kept coming back to it. And then one afternoon, I found it with a young boy just sitting there on it. Funny thing, I thought that I wanted to warn him not to sit there because it looked like it was going to collapse any minute. And then while he was sitting there, a couple with bags of groceries walked him back from up to the top where they lived. So housing is very in demand in Havana, and people were living up there in those conditions. Again, I love this pier at Pismo Beach, and if you wait around long enough, surfers will come through. So I just grabbed them when they were centered there. This is looking out of a hotel in Paris. And I loved the leading lines of this brickwork. I loved the light shining in the back. I loved this little light that seemed almost lit, and then waited till somebody walked in, and he did, and that made the shot. Street photography is easy to stalk because people are walking around. It's a little harder to stalk a monk. And this particular exhibit, this is at Lama Yuru Monastery. I saw this without the monk, and I, again, 3 times went back thinking, somebody's got to come in here. And it was just like fantastic when I came back, and here he was meditating. And then this is from Cartagena. Kind of, I think I thought the jagged edges, which were the roof shadows, were fantastic. And then this girl walks through with a kerchief that sort of echoes the angles of the roof, and with these amazing red shoes. And I just thought, wow, that is just so cool. Myanmar, amazing hall where they sell groceries and produce. And of course, there are monks walking around Myanmar all the time. So it's just a matter of time till someone comes into your frame. And again, back to Iceland, these are the sulfur mountains where sulfur is mined, and it comes up in steam from all over the place, a very mystical, kind of stinky place. And I knew there was I saw the path going up and thought somebody's going to hike up that. And after a few minutes, they did. And then another shot I love because of the colors, Havana, the colors in Cuba are just so beautiful, and they're the sense of decay and of old time removed, and was wonderful. And I think I was at that shot for maybe 20 minutes before this woman walked in with just the right clothes. So, and here's Kanchuk again. So he's the monk that you saw his Facebook page. Again, I was looking at this frame. I didn't think somebody was going to come into it, but he walked in and he said, "You want to see my latest yoga move? I mean, you're in the Himalayas in India." And you think, what? I said, sure. So he kind of bends over and does this thing, and I took the shot. So, you can find a place and stalk it in that way, wait for somebody to make it magical, or you can plan it out ahead of time. Probably the most effort I ever put into planning a shot myself was the Mesquite Dunes in Death Valley. And you know that it's hard to plan a shot because Outdoor Photographer magazine has a feature that is called Behind the Shot. It's like how I got the shot. And I wrote up a little thing, turned in this picture, and I was thrilled to be, as my husband would say, a centerfold, the only centerfold I will have. And to do this, and he was very helpful with this, the day before, you look at the dunes, you case the joint, you walk up the dunes and say, where might be a good shot? Then in the following morning, you get up before dawn with your headlamp and your equipment, and you trudge up the dunes, which turns out to be harder than you think, and set up the tripod and wait for the sun to come up. Get very low so you get these almost like waves. And that is the shot that I call my 15 minutes of fame here. I love the shot so much that I made I think it's a 4x5 or 3x4 enlargement for my kids, and they have it in their living room. It's a couch shot, we call it. I went back to the dunes, Mesquite Dunes, about 5 years later, hoping to replicate that. And as the sun came up, you could just see the outlines of all the photographers around the edges. They were all, I mean, it was terrible. There were footprints everywhere. There was no wind the night before to blow the footprints away. And so the best shot, one of the best shots I got, which I like, but it wasn't quite the same as this. And I did have to use Photoshop to erase a bunch of footsteps. The other thing you can do is join a photography workshop. These are some that I've gone to that are memorable to me. You have to find out what kind is it. Is it the kind where they just drop you in places? Is it the kind where they actually help you imagine a shot? I'm actually fine with being dropped somewhere. I know my camera well enough to know what I'm looking for, but they do run the gamut. From Cuba, this was taken through a window across the road from this woman, again, a framed shot. And this one, actually, that was a hard shot. And then also in Myanmar, there's some amazing caves with Buddhist statues, and I think they're thousands of years old. And during the flower festival, girls will make these wreaths for their hair, and people will come and, pray or ask for something for the Buddha, from the Buddha. Kids in particular. Iceland shots. And then when do you decide to choose black and white or color? It used to be you had to make that choice ahead of time. If you remember, you had a camera, you had color film, or you had black and white film. Now in Photoshop, you can take any color shot and translate it, develop it in color, or in black and white. So I always think to myself, what's the story I'm telling? What am I trying to get across here? This is a staghorn fern, and it's pretty in green and brown. But when I translated it into black and white, the story it told me was of some alien creature. It looks to me very alien. So that was the story I sort of wanted to tell. The next question is, does the addition of color add to or distract from the composition? This is the original shot on the left, and it's just a distraction. The shape and the form is what's important. Same day, I call these the meringue hills. It's just the reverse. The black and white is not that exciting. The color is the story, the beautiful dawn kind of creeping up. And then this one, I tried it in black and white, and that was the first time I saw the red shoes and thought, oh no, the story is the red shoes. And then this is from Iceland, Westerfjord. And to me, I chose black and white, not that there weren't some beautiful blues and the sky had a little bit of yellow in it, but because this is timeless to me. And I think black and white gives it a sense of agelessness, like you've been there forever. And I even called it the land before time. I think there's a print of it over there. And again, for black and white, for portraits, to me, the story here is motherhood, the preciousness of a mother, a love for a child, the protection of the mother for this child. And this happened to be a random shot going upstairs to see my daughter-in-law, see what she was doing, our second grandchild. And she happened to be just holding it like that. Hold that position. Ran down and got the camera and took this shot. Sometimes what I'll do when I take a shot, this is right up the road from you guys, the horse ranch, is I'll turn it into black and white and see, what's important in this picture? The problem with this picture, which I found out turning it into black and white, is there's too much going on. What is it a story of? Is it a story of this old branch here? Is it a story of that horse? Is he too small? Is it the clouds? It turns out, to me, there wasn't any story. So nothing I did. I couldn't do anything with that one. But it is a good test when you get rid of the color, because all there is the color. In spring here, the green is so electric that people say, you oversaturated the grass. But that's the way it looked. And it just didn't do anything. This one, on the other hand, because of the isolation of the figures, and this is Ladakh as well, the background, the sense of going into the sun, the small aperture for the light here, had to be black and white. And the Faroe Islands. We have a joke about the Faroe Islands. The sun never shines in the Faroe Islands, so you might as well do it in black and white. Lots of rocks, sort of framing the weensy little waterfall. And what the story is there's a lot of rocks in the Faroe Islands. I don't know what else the story is. However, sometimes the light shines through. This is the Funningur Church in the Faroe Islands. And then, of course, it lights up the grass, if there is any grass, and it becomes that slant of light as well. And finally, the idea of post-processing. you could have a whole lecture on the positives and the negatives of Photoshop. And I'm not going to do that to you. But the questions that I ask myself when I'm processing them is, am I representing this scene honestly? I mean, right now you can have that same scene I just showed you with a rock and put a sailboat in it with a red sail. You could do that. It's not hard to do, but it's not honest. There probably aren't any red sailboats in that area. So secondly, am I using these techniques that I have in Photoshop to capture my sense of a scene or to intensify it for drama or likes? And again, that's a slippery slope if you're hyper saturating it. And then finally, am I using Photoshop to correct camera flaws? So here's a kind of a quirky guy I like, a Scottish photographer, who says, I'm not required to be a faithful servant of the truth. And whose truth? Knowing that I've managed to replicate what it was that I saw in my mind's eye when I took the picture, my mind's eye, what I thought it looked like and felt like. It's an individual personal process. We look at the work of painters and allow them artistic license, so why can't we do the same with photography? I also have a friend who's an ancient photographer, even more ancient, and he will tell you, I would not remove a Coke can from a photograph if I hadn't seen it when I took the picture, because that's not the way it was. And I tell him, well, that's a different story then. It's a story about pollution, not a story about the scene that you have. But we disagree. So a couple shots very quickly and what I did with them. This is in the Lofoten Islands fishing hut. And I lightened this area with a fishing hut. Why? Because that's how I saw it. I didn't even see the rest of it. I was thinking, oh, what a cool fishing shot. So darken the rest of it so that it's not the main entree on the agenda. This is totally Photoshop. So this is Casa Grande, Arizona. It's one of the oldest ruins of Native American buildings. And it was a beautiful place. It was very eerie. You could almost feel spirits. And I was trying to recreate that. The more I looked at it, the more I would see like bodies lying there. And so I threw filters on this and I hyped up this and that. The original shot basically looked like that. You can see the form is the same and the black and white is okay. But this means it's a ruin. The previous picture means it's got some magic to it, in my mind. Obviously, everybody interprets it differently. I think this is my favorite shot, maybe of all time. Cuba, two boys discussing the inside of a baseball. I call this the elements of baseball because they're all, they're in their shorts, they've got their equipment, the mitt that is obviously too big for him because you don't get supplies very easily in Havana because of embargoes and so forth. And they just looked like the light on their faces, their bodies to me was beautiful. Now, what did I do with this? In back of them was a garlic cellar and a lady, as I remember, arguing with her husband and, a bunch of other stuff. And I didn't want that in there. That's a different story. Does it tell a different story? Yeah. It tells the story I want to tell, which is the fascination of these boys for the inside of a baseball. I showed it to another friend once, and she says, why are they looking at the ball of yarn? I said, you've never seen the inside of a baseball like that. So, and then you want to really go off the charts. I had taken this picture of a magnolia, and I had pictures of these three flamingos. And as I was looking at their feathers, I thought, yeah, they remind me of petals. So this is a composite, 3 different shots, actually. The birth of a flamingo. And again, that's totally Photoshop. And then the guy, this little cowboy, he was pretty short, said he wanted to look like he was from the Old West. So just threw a sepia filter on it and gave him a copy. The last thing about Photoshop is this is an original shot of, they were roping some cattle. I told you I wasn't a rancher. They were roping some fillies that evening. And this was the original shot. When you take a shot with beautiful light, oftentimes you have huge differences between the bright light and the shadows. So in cameras today, we do something called expose for the light, as if you had a light reader and you put your camera, poke it up there and you go, well, what's the correct setting for the lightest part of the picture? If you don't, you're going to have blown out highlights. And when you print it, there's nothing on, it's like a white piece of paper on those areas. So this is what I started with. And this is the finished product. Because the darks, you can bring the darks up, most cameras today in Photoshop, you bring the darks up so you see what's down there, but you don't blow out the highlights in the sky. So at the end, I wanted to close with a quote from Trent Park, who's an Australian photographer, does some very weird stuff that I really like. I'm forever chasing light. Light turns the ordinary into the magical. And that's sort of my mantra, I think. That and Om Mani Padme Hum. So thank you for listening. I really enjoyed talking about it.
Once again, thank you for coming this evening. After viewing all of Jennifer's amazing work, I recall Henri Casson when he said that many people are under the illusion that you take a photograph with a camera, and that's not true. You take a photograph with your eye and your heart. And this evening, we were able to see someone who uses her eye and her heart. Thank you very much. Next month, we have a wonderful program for you. Mrs. Roth, if you live in the area, you've probably been to Fololi, and she was important there. And we have Don DeFranco, who is the president of the Equestrian Legacy, and he's going to be talking about Mrs. Roth and her horses. So it's a great opportunity to learn about some of our local history. So I hope you'll join us then. Please drive home carefully, and thank you again for joining us. Good night.